Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Crystal Monero, the director of REDFeather, and I am thrilled to be joined today by John Matthews. John, welcome.
Hello. Good
We're so
morning.
glad to have you on. For anyone who is maybe not aware, although we were just saying, boy, it'd be hard not to have heard John Matthews' name at some point if you've been looking into these topics at all. John has been a professional independent scholar since 1980, a truly prolific author. He's a lifetime study of King Arthur and has put out just a tremendous volume of works on Arthurian legend, on tarot, druidry, a variety of topics, and pirates most recently, which made the New York Times bestseller list for 22 weeks running. Congratulations. So that's an incredible. How many titles under your belt exactly at this point, John?
Um, it's round about 110.
Smokes.
But
So
when I
just
think about that, it feels weird, but it is actually around about that. Yeah.
it's weird to me, like not to have lost track at this point. You've done.
Oh,
That's
I look at
just
the list
wild.
and think, have I added that one in? Oh, I'm not sure I have, because
Sure.
there really are. I'm always working on 3 or 4 at once.
Right. Well, hey, next week maybe a few more. We're excited to have several in the Red Feather catalog, and of course, we just got to quickly show off some of the older things. So from John, we've got the Beowulf Oracle, the Grail Tarot, the Byzantine Tarot, which is just gorgeous. People just go crazy when they're looking through these at the shows and things, and everyone knows it. And most recently, we're excited to be welcoming The Fool's New Journey as John's latest release with us, and we'll be excited to know more about this today. So let's see, John, did I miss anything important about you?
Oh, I think that's probably enough. That's
That's
probably enough. Yeah, absolutely. I work in films as well as a historical advisor. Worked on the big Arthurian movie with Jerry Bruckheimer did a few years ago, and that was great fun. And I keep in touch with them and do a little bit of work now and then with with the movies, which is fun.
really fantastic, and gosh, I can only imagine the colorful characters and experiences and things that get to comprise your day to day. I know I always love just getting to having the opportunity to connect with people all day long who are interested in these things, learning about these categories. So it's a fun place to be.
I've been very lucky. I've met some amazing people over the years and stayed in touch with some of them. I just had a wonderful forward written for my one of my next Arthurian books by Sir John Borman, the
Wow.
filmmaker who made Excalibur years ago, and was very kind enough to say how much I'd influenced him, which was nice to hear.
That's fantastic. And, I have to add, John, you've influenced me as well. So, long before I ever knew that I'd be coming to Red Feather, about 20 years ago, on my very first trip to the UK and to Glastonbury, I was fortunate enough to come across the Druid source book at a bookshop in Glastonbury. And of course, as a younger person at the time interested in these things. I mean, that was just such a tremendously influential trip for me coming over from the States and having a chance to, be enriched in that history. And your title, I, I paid a terrible value for because the dollar was just doing awful on the pound at the time. But I gladly dragged it home with me because I was just so excited to find such a comprehensive body of work. And I appreciate the value of the research and the level and depth that has gone into everything that you do.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, well, I try to be as well informed as I can be, put it that way.
And the readers appreciate that, and so do I for
I
sure.
hope I
So,
hope they
you know,
yes.
s- speaking to expert titles that break the mold and break new ground, the Fool's New Journey. So, this is a really innovative deck, and the reason being that obviously the Fool is going on a new journey, meaning that the tarot has been restructured in this case into kind of a whole new system, right? Which is a pretty wild concept, might excite some readers a lot, might make some people a little bit nervous about how to approach, or maybe worse. No, we get very attached to our structures sometimes, and it can be a pretty wild idea when we start thinking about breaking those things apart, especially if we're still calling it a tarot. So, John, what can you tell us more about this deck, and how did this idea come to you, first of all?
Well, the idea came out of nowhere. I mean, as you've already said, I've been working with tarot as a reader, as a creator of it for years, and I've done about, I think it's 13 altogether,
Mm.
not counting this. So we're out of the unlucky number and into 14 now. But I mean, basically, this all started during lockdown, during the COVID scare, and I was out in the garden, and I was thinking about another deck that I was working on at the time, and I kind of drifted off, almost not quite into a trance, not quite to a sleep, and I found myself thinking, why does the tarot have to be the way it is? Why is it 78 cards? Why do you have the four suits? Well, I knew that the four suits came out of the playing card system, which is where tarot mostly, emerged. But I thought, well, why do we need them, and do we need them now? And then I sat there and I wrote down this list of 60 titles, and they included all the traditional majors from the famous decks, but they also had a lot of new ones that I didn't really understand myself. I mean, there were things like hope and the past and history and the future and things like that. At the time, it was like, where is this coming from? What am I doing here? And anyway, so I over the next few weeks, I settled down with it. I started thinking it through, and I realized that what I was looking at was the fact that the world changed with that in that year, with the coming of COVID and all of the things that happened as a result of that. The world was never going to be quite the same again. So maybe tarot needed to shift too. Maybe we needed a new kind of tarot. I didn't want to abandon tarot itself. I didn't want it to be an oracle, because of course a tarot is an oracle anyway. Um, so I sat with it and I worked with it some more, and I realized that what I was creating here was a completely new way of looking at tarot and of exploring it and of reading it. And one of the first things that I thought was, there's so much symbolism in the tarot itself, in the original Renaissance, and from that period onward, all of the additions to that have amounted to a huge, massive collection of symbolism. And while this is perfectly valid, and while it is one of the reasons why tarot is so ongoing and so popular, it can be difficult if you don't have the background knowledge, if you don't know why certain images appear, for instance, in a Renaissance tarot. It can be, yes, you're looking at this picture, there's how many swords are there in there, how many cups, you're looking at all these different things. And I also felt very strongly that we needed to update it in a way. We needed to have things that had an immediate relevancy for readers today, not those who hadn't necessarily spent half their lives, as I have, studying this, but
Sure.
who were going, what's tarot then? What can I find out from this? So this is why I put in things, things that were not in any of the originals. And then I thought, now I'm going to have too many cards. So what can I lose? And I decided very boldly, and I know some people will really scream when I say this, I got rid of the courts. And so we've ended up with 60 majors, basically.
Mhm.
But each of them are simplified visibly and visually, so that if I can hold up a card, this, for
Mhm.
instance, this is the Fool himself that you saw on the cover of the book. But we have others. We have hope, and hope at the moment is very important to everyone, I think. Or we have wonder. These were concepts that are quite common to everybody, but were not really part of the original tarot. And I have to say that some of the things that ended up as majors had originally been present, shall we say, almost not visible, but there in the concept of the courts as well. So the courts haven't totally disappeared. And of course, all of the original majors are there as well. So I kept on working and working with this. And then I started talking to Charles Newington, with whom I'd already done the Goblin Market Tarot. And I said, what do you think about this? And he liked the idea. And he said, what do you want from the art? And I said, well, I want simplicity. I don't want it to be laden down with too much symbolism. I want an image that will hit you straight away and hopefully make you aware that what you're looking at is something extraordinary. So, I mean, we've got traditional cards like the Emperor, for instance, and it's very, again, it's very plain, very bold, and not so much symbolism as you would normally expect to get in there. Um, But we managed to put our own little twist onto everything. So with the hermit was female. The hermit is carrying a seeing globe and walking through into one door into another place. So all the imagery that we'd gathered up over the years is still there. And if you really want it, if you're a traditional tarot reader and you want to find that, it's still in there. But there's also much more. So
Mm.
really, it was a whole new look. I mean, for ages, it was called the Reset Tarot, and nobody liked that. I was the only one who liked that idea. And then I was talking with my wife, Kathleen, and she said, "Well, what about the Fool's Journey? How about the Fool having a new journey? This is him starting out." And of course, I immediately went, "That's it. That's the title." So bless her, she gave me the title I needed. And then I looked at Eden Gray, who was a tarot expert from the back in the 50s, and she had written a book about the Fool's Journey. And really, that was the first time that idea of the Fool traveling through all of the deck had been put into print. I think a lot of people had sort of understood it, but I think Eden Gray was the first one to really write that down. So I took that as a start and I thought, okay, the Fool is going to journey through 60 major cards, is going to find all kinds of experiences along the way. It's a new journey, it's a new beginning. So that was how that part got together. And the way in which I tried to make this really as clear as possible for even for those who work with tarot all the time and those who maybe were coming to it for the first time was I wrote two stories.
Mhm.
And the two stories, the first story is the Fool's Journey through a traditional deck in which he follows his way all the way through just the majors, and the story goes of his experiences along the way. Then I wrote another story, The Fool's New Journey, using the new deck. And I would say to anybody that picks this up, if you read those two stories before you do anything else, then I think you'll get it immediately what I'm doing.
They're conveniently highlighted for you with yellow edging, so you know right
It-
where to jump to get to those 2.
Straight to it, straight to it. And of course, needless to say, the book does contain, the some traditional meanings, but also obviously all the new ones. So you might have a little bit of study to do if you pick this up. But I still have made it as much as possible, thanks to Charles' wonderfully clear, simple designs, as instantly usable as possible. So that if you pick up this one, for instance, the question, it's pretty obvious straight away what is going on there. And why should we be asking questions? Are we questioning ourselves? Are we questioning the universe? Are we questioning the tarot? Are we questioning friends? The situation is there, and it's about the subtle way in which we can ask questions. So I'm hoping that everything that's in there, we have another card here, which is nature. And at a time when we are so very conscious of our connection with nature, you can see the fun aspect of this. The Fool is hanging on a leaf from a tree, and the leaf itself has a face, so that you feel that connection immediately with the natural world, and that's something that's emphasized wherever I can in the deck.
I think, the art and the whole experience absolutely do lead you to that very, sort of clear, intuitive, graspable experience. Certainly the writing is very, clear. The concepts are things we can all relate to, which are these sort of key experiences in life that everyone can get behind. The art absolutely does, convey in a very simple way, straightforward way, what the meaning of the card is. But what I also appreciated is, it's not just while you're sort of looking at the card, but when we talk about how these things perform sort of intuitively, energetically, in working with the deck, I also found that your deck was especially forthcoming intuitively, if I can say so. So, I'll sort of like to shuffle and I kind of like to pull out the cards that like jump out at me energetically. And I find with some decks, it sort of takes a few minutes, of course, and you've got to kind of make small talk for a few minutes. And my experience with your deck was it was very quick to sort of light up and say, ooh, me, and quick to chat and interested to chat and give good, clear, straightforward delivery, I think. So, for my 2 cents, as someone who was able to pick it up recently for the first time and try it as a new user, yes, 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 checking all boxes on the things that you can see when you're looking at pictures, but yes, too, to that experience when you actually pick up the deck in your hands and it performing the way that it was designed to perform. So, bravo.
Oh, thank you. No, well, I mean, that is exactly what we were aiming at, obviously. And I've already had some wonderful feedback from people who've been getting advanced copies. I'm going to do nice reviews, I hope. I mean, I had a friend of mine who's just done a reading for the future of your election.
Oh,
It's an interesting topic. But what he
I'm a little
got,
afraid to know.
no, no, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's a bumpy ride, but anyway, I will say no more. But it was interesting that he chose to do that, and it's interesting what he got
Mm,
because there's a real universality in this. I mean, it's interesting actually that most of the traditional tarot always ends with the world,
mm.
and for a long time I was absolutely sure that that was going to be the last card in my deck. Then I thought, actually, I wanted to be bigger than the world, so we ended up with eternity.
Mm.
So, in other words, the universe, everything is
Bigger.
included in there as well, and that opens it right out. And I think maybe that's something of what you were feeling when you got the
Mm.
intuitive buzz from the cards. But that, to me, is the best thing, that you could just pick it up and pull out a card, and wow, it's just right for you.
And just go. And for that reason, I think it's a deck that will have appeal to a lot of readers, right? I think for, an intermediate and advanced readers who are just interested in things that help to break the mold, that give you new ways to look about cartomancy, new experiences, are absolutely going to appreciate the deck. Even though it is straightforward, it absolutely runs very deep. And as you dig into those dreamlike allegories for the fool's new journey, there is a lot there to be sort of discovered and meditated on. That's really interesting for sure. But, I think it's something that a beginner could very easily pick up as well. The images are simple enough that I think I could probably hand these to my 9-year-old, and she could probably give a pretty good reading just because the cards
Good.
are things that we all understand, right?
Yeah.
And so it's something that has a lot of appeal. Something I'm curious to know, typically in traditional tarot, we see majors and we think, oh, these are big things, these are archetypal things, major movements, right? We see the minors and we think, oh, this is sort of the everyday stuff, often speaking. So, what are the implications? How do we interpret this when we've got a system of all majors, right? Sometimes not all the things in life are big stuff. So, is this still going to provide a reading for the everyday, or is this really more about the big picture?
No, I think it's for the everyday as well. I mean, the thing is that you don't separate the things out. You don't separate majors and minors to, well, I don't know anyone who does anyway, but it's they overlap with each other and they cross over with each other and they influence each other. But here, I think because the new things particularly are very everyday, there is that same, I mean, they're performing that function. It's just they're not called courts, and they don't have kings and queens and pages and knights, and a number of separate lists of cups and wands and all the rest of it. They're all just pure in that
Mm,
way. They're simple, they're direct, but they're also profound, I
mm,
hope. And certainly the response I've had from people have been saying they are very profound, because they go straight to the heart of whatever the question is. I mean, I always say to people I read for and students that I have that the deck you're holding in your hands is not magic.
mm,
It's a set of cards on cardboard printed. That's it. It's your relationship with the imagery and what's behind it that is the magic, if you like. So for me, if I pick up a card like this one, Wonder, um, I think I immediately associate that with this need to protect what is wonderful, what is powerful, what is beautiful in our lives, and that we sometimes don't remember to do that. And I think that's inherent in the picture. I think just the position um, of the woman there, and I think the little figure who represents the wonder is there. I mean, I think that would speak to anyone, and that's what I tried to do. I tried to make the language of the cards universal as
beautiful.
possible so that you wouldn't, even if you didn't speak English, you wouldn't need necessarily to know what tradition means. You could look at that and you'd get the sense of the traditional figure reading the great book and so on. So as far as possible, we've done that.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think when I was putting together the reel for it, I had this idea for like how much has changed since tarot came along, right? And I found myself in a couple of seconds of video trying to summarize several hundred years of human history, and it makes you appreciate how much has changed since tarot came along. I mean, it speaks to the enduring nature of the system, but you certainly raise an interesting point that maybe it is time to think of something new. I'll be curious to know, do you have any thoughts about developing more? Is this a new tarot system? You know, is this something that's now, so we're going to see someone else, or you're going to develop another deck that has a different aspect of the wonder card, or do you see this as sort of a one-off on of itself?
I don't know. I mean, there are possibilities for that, of course,
Mm,
because each of these has its own story in that respect. And I've actually been, I'm working on a small book with Charles, which is called The Book of the Fool. And it's not specifically tied to this, but the imagery is all taken from these.
mm,
So this is a collection of stories and poems about the fool. And, you know, it tells you more, I think, because I think a story can tell you more than 1,000 pictures. Or it's like people saying, you know, 5 notes of music will tell you more than a whole book.
mm.
In this the same way, I think, you know, when a story is written in a particular way, when it draws upon such deep levels, it can do much more. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I mean, let's see how it goes. You know, I
Guess
mean, I
so.
feel people are going to love this or hate it, and I'm hoping, of course, most of them will love it. But you know, you can't please everyone, can you?
Absolutely, and I'm sure I'll be really curious to hear everyone's input as it comes across, just because a lot of it will have to do with just who the reader is, and yeah, I guess how open-minded they are to something that breaks out of the mold, right? Is there something? Is there any special way how to approach the deck? Special spreads that are different than how we might usually approach tarot?
I have put some in the book, one or two, which were designed specifically to go with this, but you can really use any spread. I mean, my favorite way of working with these things is the story. You know, I keep coming back to story because the cards themselves tell a story. So rather than going, here's a card in this position that means that, here's a card over here that means this, let's lay out 4 or 5, 6 cards in a row and see what story it tells.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that that is amazing because you go in with a question, you go in with something that's troubling you, and suddenly there it is. There's the answer. It's right in front of you, like a story unfolding, and it's your story. So I think that side of it is that's one of the ways that I would approach it. I mean, as I said, if I was picking this up for the first time, or somebody I knew was doing that, I'd say read the stories first, as we said earlier, and then try different combinations. I mean, I always say again, every deck I do, I always put one instruction in each time. Spend as much time just sitting with the cards, looking at them, just holding them in your hands, getting the feel of them before you do anything, before you sit down and do a reading. Of course, most people are impatient. They just go, well, I want a reading right now. I'm going to lay out 5 cards. What does it tell me? Well, hopefully it will tell you a lot. But it's if you take time, if you work more, carefully through them, and also, of course, read the book. I know some people just throw the book aside because they know about tarot and that's it. This one, I don't think you will be able to do that so well. So read the book.
To read the book, it's chock full of insight. It explains the whole system. There's tons of allegory, and there are things to work on and dig into when you're ready to go deeper. It's also, it's not like a 600-page tome you've got to get through. This is a pretty easy pickup, pretty easy read, a tarot that's kind of meant to be for everyone and accessible. Yes?
Yes, and if you want to go down a reading track, then there are 2 or 3 in there that are specifically designed for work to work with this. And if you'd use those, then you hopefully will find that that is another good way in, certainly.
Fantastic. And I realized we hadn't been showing too much of the cards. So of course I just wanted to be able to show these off a little bit themselves. So
Yes, it's
uh
fun. Yes,
here,
yeah.
Charles, excellent artwork. And
There are
I'd
some
love
quite
to.
startling ones, but they're traditional. You see Temperance you've got there, which
Mhm.
is still the same thing, the Hanged Man.
Hangman,
All the original ones are still in there, just not the courts. Beauty,
beauty.
yeah.
There's the
Yeah,
questioner.
you know.
Really fascinating, and I love too how the cards are, like, palm-sized, so you can kind of take them with you when you wanna go, right? And it comes too with a little tuck box, so you
I
really
was
can
thinking
carry it
that.
with you.
I actually thought about that, and I thought, well, we're talking about the fool's journey here. Take your cards on a journey. This will fit in your pocket. They'll fit in your handbag. They'll fit in your backpack, wherever, and they'll go with you all the way. And you'll find yourself stopping along the way, maybe, and going on your own tarot journey. Why not?
Perfection. John, is there anything that I've missed that readers might wanna know?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that try to approach it not as some kind of shocking thing that is going to turn tarot on its head forever, because of course it isn't. I love tarot. I love straight, ordinary tarot, and I probably will do several more in my lifetime. But this is just a different way of looking
Mhm.
at a tradition that we've had that, as you said, goes back hundreds of years and has evolved. Well, why shouldn't it evolve again? The
Sure.
last big evolution was in the 19th century when the ritual magicians got hold of it, the
Mhm.
Crowleys, the Waits, and so forth, and they added a huge amount to it, but they were still working with the originals. And I'm still working with the originals, but I'm trying to take it beyond that into something further out. Further up and further in, as C.S. Lewis put it.
Or onward and upward, as the cover might
Yes,
tell us too.
that too, indeed.
Excellent. John, any, upcoming appearances or events or anything that you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
Um, well, the next major appearance, certainly with regard to this, is not till October, but the London Tarot Conference. I'll be appearing there, and I'll be doing a talk with slides showing all of or most of the art, and also doing some readings with the audience. So hopefully, that will be really good. There's going to be an official launch at the Atlantis Bookshop in London, and I'm not quite sure of the date for that yet, but it's coming up. So I have another deck that I won't mention because you don't publish it, but there's another one coming at almost the same time. So it's like, which do we do this week? But yeah, I mean, look out on and go to our website for this or any other of our work. Go to helloquest.org.uk, and there you'll find an announcement for anything we're doing and any other new books. There's lots of other new stuff coming, and courses and so forth. So, if you want to know more, want to work with us directly, come along. We can't wait to see you.
Well, I know readers are just going to be fascinated and fall in love with the Fool's New Journey. So, releasing soon and available for pre-order if you're interested. And John, we'll look forward to continuing to see the fabulous things that come out of your dreams.
I look forward to it enormously. Great to work with you all. Nice to
Wonderful. John, thanks so much. Be well. We'll catch you soon.
you too. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.